We're recording.
Hi, Kyle.
Hi, Dennis.
We don't have a name for this thing yet, but Kyle and I are both very excited to talk about the new WandaVision series. And we decided it would be fun to record those conversations after we watch the show and put them up weekly so that y'all can hear what we think and tell us how wrong we are, or whatever the case may be. Um, we are, I don't know about you, but I did no research. Like, I just watched the show cold, and then I watched it a second time and sort of took notes. So it's possible that I would say things that are completely wrong about the making of and production of this.
I also did no research. My history with Vision and Wanda is I had one issue of West Coast Avengers in grade school. And then my friend, whose parents were religious, made him get rid of all of his comics. And he gave me one issue of Vision and the Scarlet Witch where they have a baby. And that's it. That's all I know about those characters.
Well, that issue is seminal from what I understand. I missed, I wasn't reading Avengers comics during the period of time, or that was going on, where their relationship was going on and baby and stuff. So that is a hole in my knowledge. But I was very much reading comic books when during Bendis's run of all new Avengers and everything that came before and after it, delved deep into that stuff and used it to go forward. That's when I was working at the comic shop and reading every Marvel title. So I have lots of thoughts about what they might be doing, and also the Vision series that Tom King and Gabriel Hernandez Walta was fantastic. One of my favorite books that came out that year, and that clearly is inspiring this too. So a lot of the modern Marvel stuff that I think that they're playing with here, I know, but like you, that's where I have no real previous knowledge of the characters as a couple. I've written Scarlet Witch several times because when I was on X-Men, she would show up in things, and we did a Scarlet Witch issue of my Jean Grey run where I kind of delved into her mental illness stuff. So with a little bit of, I have a little bit of personal experience with character, but yeah, beyond that, kind of coming in cold.
Well, coming in cold with those two, however, I spent hours and hours, months and months, as I think you did too, watching Nick at Night in the 1990s.
Oh yeah,
So, this the first two episodes of WandaVision spoke to me in a way I was not expecting because if you've watched it, and if you're listening to this, I sure hope you have. Uh, they they really do a very thorough homage of that kind of old television stuff from. Well, when did Dick Van Dyke come out? The 50s, 60s?
I feel like I feel like Vic. I don't know, but my guess would be Dick Van Dyke was late 50s, early 60s, and then Bewitched was probably later, mid 60s to late 60s because it was colorized. Did they colorize Dick Van Dyke or was it already over by the time?
It was over, and Bewitched switched in the middle. There were black and white episodes of
Right.
Bewitched. Um, they nailed it. I was amazed at how well those episodes did as old TV shows. After I finished watching it, I was like, I wouldn't mind if this were just the show. I would watch more episodes.
I so I too was impressed by that. There was a show here in Kansas City called AM Live. It would play old sitcoms, probably because they got the rights to 50s and 60s sitcoms for super cheap. So I Love Lucy, Dick Van Dyke, Bewitched, I Dream of Jeannie, to like Gilligan's Island. I've seen hours and hours and
Yeah,
hours.
Newhart, all that stuff.
They really, really did nail it in a way. And I'm very interested to hear from people that are 10 years younger than us and younger.
Hmm.
Have you seen this shit? Because Nick at Night now plays like Friends.
Right.
Does
I
this
had
make any
this.
sense to a 25-year-old? I don't know.
I had the same question because that was a sweet spot for me. I was not expecting to like the show as much as I did because I'm not all of the Marvel shows. I'm just kind of neutral on them. I'm kind of like, yeah, I'll try them out. And this is the one that I thought that I would be interested in the most because it was so quirky.
Right.
But I really liked it. I thought the neighbor was hilarious. Uh, I don't know her name. I should have looked it up. The woman, she was in Parks and Rec. She played the campaign manager for the the person running against Leslie Knope. but man, she was good. And what's her husband's name that she's always throwing under the bus?
It was Agnes and Fred, right?
Was that it? Fred?
You've heard the character's name is Agnes. That actress is always fantastic. She was in Bad Moms, I think it's called.
Uh-huh.
But I don't know her name either. Once again, no research.
Well, I have a suspicion based on nothing that her invisible husband will appear in some nefarious way eventually. But
so let's two things. Number one, while we're talking about the general scope of things, let's go general, and then we'll specifically talk about each episode.
yeah,
And after that, we'll do what we think might be going on, because I feel like that should go last. But
that's a good plan.
Off the top, what impressed me, maybe even more than the fact that they did such a good job of homaging that stuff, is that they stuck to it. Like, that's all it is. Mm-hmm. Especially in the first episode. Like, you're just watching Dick Van Dyke starring Scarlet Witch and Vision, and it's incredible. Because like, the set looks like Dick Van Dyke, the premise, the special effects are similar to something you would have seen there. And in fact, weirdly, because on Dick Van Dyke, wasn't he a comedy writer?
Yeah, he worked for the Alan Brady show, and Alan Brady looked like Alan Brady was beardless. It was Reiner. What's his name?
Carl Reiner.
Carl Reiner played Alan Brady,
right?
And you had the exact same vibe as the boss in this show.
But it's funny because that set looks just like the Dick Van Dyke set, except one of them is a TV, like a writing room, and the other one is a computational services weird office building thing. But yeah, the sets were just spot on. And yeah, straight up, it's just an old sitcom. Other than the moment where the guy starts to choke and it goes into like modern filmmaking for a second, which was awesome. And you're so in the moment of an old sitcom that whenever like the camera angles changed, it gets creepy for a second. It's pretty great.
Yeah, they did a great job. Again, to echo what you said about what do people who are 25 think of this, the gag where he walks through the ottoman, do they have any idea?
I don't know. Yeah, I saw a thing online that said that they're pretty sure the first episode was I Love Lucy, and I'm like, no, it's obviously Dick Van Dyke over the ottoman. Also, the set layout, like they had that sunken living room, so that
and Bewitched. I mean, it was kind of Bewitched too, because she's a witch, of course.
Sure.
And all the stuff she was doing. The first episode ended. It ended with the computer screen, right? And we got a little bit of a glimpse of someone monitoring the show, and then it went into the Marvel credits. Which at that point it kind of lost me. I was like, oh, okay, it's a whatever 3D rendered credit sequence. I was way more into the wacky, and I was laughing at the sitcom jokes.
Yeah.
They did a nice job.
Because you hadn't seen, I haven't seen a show like that. I haven't seen those shows in a really long time. Like, I haven't sat down and watched one of those, but it was such a big part of my childhood. I would say I watched as many episodes of those, like as many hours of that kind of sitcom as I did the 90s sitcoms that were like on.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, on Nick at Night, they used to have the block party all summer. Every night they would show like blocks of these different shows, like Bewitched Be Wednesdays, Lucy Tuesdays. I just watched that shit over and over.
But I've seen some people on Facebook complaining, and they're like, I gotta admit, everybody loves this, but I didn't like it. And like, yeah, if you aren't up for sitting and watching an old sitcom, you are not going to like the first two episodes. Now, I suspect more of the the bleeding end and stuff will happen going forward. This first couple, they just leaned in.
Well, they did in the second one already. Some more stuff bled in. They started putting things in color. Something that I thought broke from their homage, which they could have done if they wanted to. The whole episode took place outside, which is not really a thing that happened in old TV shows. And there were a couple of scenes where they were walking down the sidewalk, and I thought, well, if this were Dick Van Dyke, it would be a grainy, the lower quality film of them outside, because that's what it was like back then.
Right.
So that I noticed was a little bit different, but the story was so tight for a stupid sitcom.
It really was. Well, and the thing that amazed me the most about the second episode is that the magic act gone wrong was actually funny. And that would be so hard to write, because they were playing it like an old sitcom, and to have that not be like a boring pastiche that's not funny because comedy has moved on was pretty impressive.
Yeah, they did a good job. And the I loved the animation, the stupid when he ate the gum, the stupid cartoon of his guts. It was great. Oh, and at the beginning, I liked the intro that was sort of like I Dream of Jeannie. I I don't know that they nailed the animation, but might be comparing it to my memory of what that old animation is like. I'm gonna go back and watch.
It was Bewitched.
You're right.
Homaging Bewitched because they flew in past the moon. But I Dream of Jeannie and Bewitched, let's face it, are the same show.
Yeah.
Like, they just ripped it off and made it Genie, right? But I believe Bewitched came first.
But it was so what happened? They found a helicopter in color. The woman's blood was in color. They saw that horrible. He looked like a beekeeper, or he looked like a hazardous waste suit.
Yeah,
guy.
There were bees around him, right?
I thought so. That's why I thought he looked like a beekeeper. So maybe that's what that was. We'll see more.
It was interesting because so I watched the show for the first time on my girlfriend's TV, which is for some reason dark. Like, the whites don't pop as much on that television. And I thought my eyes were going bad because it was blurry, but it's blurry on purpose. Like, I watched it on my laptop up close today. And yeah, like, except the moments where it slips out of it being an old sitcom, the like picture clarity is more similar. It's a little bit crisper than an actual low res, but it's like they blurred it. Like, it wasn't in perfect focus a lot of times, which made some of the stuff hard to tell exactly what was going on. But I believe there was a beekeeper with bees. But it makes me wonder, because in Marvel there's the advanced idea mechanics AIM guys wear those yellow beekeeper looking suit things. Is that a reference to that? Because like that image inside the television, weird whatever she's trapped in, she would see as a beekeeper, or is it something else entirely? I don't know. Because that's the moment at the end where she sees that beekeeper thing, and then she's like, no, and it rewinds, and she plays the scene out differently.
Right. And I thought, at first I thought her, when they were doing the magic act, that her costume was gratuitous, but it's exactly like when Georgette sings Steam Heat in the Mary Tyler Moore Show, and when Mary Tyler Moore wears something exactly like that, which I thought.
Also, that outfit, her assistant outfit and her like sexy anniversary outfit in the first episode, they didn't sex it up more. Like, those cuts and fits match what they would have done then.
Exactly, yeah.
So yeah, like it was like sort of gratuitous for the time, but for now it was like very covering, not sheer. They really leaned into it. The only times that they did break from that is I feel like the sexual innuendo was a lot harder than it would have been back in then.
Oh yeah, they never would have done that pulling the blanket over gag. Right. That never would have happened. I mean, the beds were apart all the time. They were never pushed together. I didn't see twin beds pushed together until a Pauly Shore movie, Son-in-Law.
Right, a fine Pauly Shore movie. Maybe the greatest Pauly Shore movie. But yeah, and then in the first episode when they were talking about, she and the neighbor were talking, there was a lot of innuendo that was way raunchier. I mean, not raunchy by today's standards, but in the 60s it would have been way too savvy. That character, I think she brings a lot of life to, because that first episode basically just has the two of them, the boss and his wife, and then like the coworker and the neighbor lady. And that neighbor lady is so necessary, like, because she's like so that over the top vaudevillian acting style that was always the wacky character, you know?
I noticed during the first episode, I couldn't believe that I felt anxiety for the absurd story they had presented me with, where I knew that, oh no, she's preparing for a date night. What's going to happen?
They did an excellent job. And when she's in the kitchen and she's magic, so you feel like she could just snap her fingers and there would be food, but she has to turn uncooked food into cooked food, which is a very like bewitched situation.
Yeah.
Because it seems like her magic is capable of doing whatever the scene requires, but if the drama comes from her needing to actually cook the food, then it plays that direction, which was all very. It doesn't matter. It's just the sitcom logic that I love.
Yeah, what happened at the end? Oh, she became pregnant,
Yes.
which I didn't put together until today. That it's because when they pulled her blankets up, that's when that happened. It just seemed like a random thing when I was watching it. And then they colorized everything.
Yes, and there were a couple of moments where things broke through, like the tree that was banging on the window. Clearly, something was going on there. And then she's at the garden party. The radio starts saying,
"Oh yeah,
questions.
What? So there were two commercials. There was a commercial for a watch, and there was a commercial for a Tony Stark
toaster.
It was a toaster.
It was a toaster that claimed that it could also cook pie.
Yeah, or meat maybe, or meatloaf.
Meatloaf. Yeah, I think it had a drawer in the bottom that would warm things, but it was also a toaster. And and both of those implied a bomb that was going to go off. The toaster, when it was working, beeped faster and faster, like a bomb's going to go off.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
And then there was a ticking clock in the watch, and the watch was Strucker, who I believe is a Hydra bad guy in Marvel Comics. Like, isn't there like a Baron Strucker or something? Again, no research. Maybe. So I believe, and it had a Hydra logo on the watch.
Oh, did it?
Was that the second time?
Interesting.
But yeah, the pregnancy thing is interesting because and we're going to get into spoiler territory here, potentially. I don't know where the show's going, but I know the 2000s era Marvel storylines. Wanda's children that she had with Vision, it turned out were not real. She had constructed them with her magic, and in the comics. And when they forced her to accept that, she sort of had a psychological break, which is what eventually led to House of M, where she recreated society so that mutants were in control and humans were subjugated. The world was just as bad with mutants in control. It's just that the humans were being subjugated. And so at the end of that, she said no more mutants, and almost all the mutants on Earth lost their powers. And then coming out of that, two characters in the Young Avengers sprung up who looked a lot like Maximovs and who were the same age and looked like. So the implication is that her twins that she created were rebuilt into the world outside of that. And I think that's the prevailing wisdom of that now. I'm not sure exactly what was done with that later. But so the fact that they have a child there implies that all of this might be leading toward some really Wanda's very scary, powerful stuff going forward. And I can imagine a world where they use this show to explain why there's been no mutants in the MCU up until this point, if that's something Wanda did.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Also, they could do none of that. It's possible because when they do the movies, sometimes they follow the storylines from the comics completely indirectly, and other times they just cherry pick the cool beats and use them, and other times they don't. It seems like they're heading in a direction they don't touch it at all. So who knows? But there are some really interesting things that happen with Wanda's powers going overboard and creating a lot of problems and mental breaks for her and stuff that they can play with if they want to. One thing, you may feel differently about this. I thought the reason I was the least interested in this until they started showing the cool trailers that kind of implied what it's going to be is, as much as I love Paul Bettany, I think that in the movies, Vision and Scarlet Witch are two of the least interesting characters in every way. Like, the Vision storyline is in the worst of all the movies, I think. Like, that second Avengers movie, I did not care for, and that plot line is interesting. And because he sort of plays in that, he plays it as a automaton, kind of like he really plays up the android of it. That when they put them together in what's it called, Infinity War, I just wasn't that invested because I wasn't that invested in Wanda, and I never thought Vision was that interesting. So the fact that they were able to make me really like the characters in something so weird that's so different from that is pretty impressive.
Yeah, that is interesting. I'm the opposite of you. I was the most interested in this show, but it's because all of the shows, all of the characters that have been given shows, they're all the people who don't get much time on in the movies,
Right.
and you don't really have much investment of any of that tier of characters, except the cool stuff they do,
Right.
or the way they look, and I don't really care what Bucky does.
Sure.
And Loki, I like Loki okay. Um, but to me, I thought Vision was cool. I really liked seeing his skill set turned into live action because that's not really something we've seen before.
Right.
So I like him.
Well, I think that probably, especially after seeing this, I would imagine the point of these series is to make us care more about characters who have been side characters, because I mean, a lot of the heavy hitters are in either a very different place or no longer going to be involved after Endgame. You know, Tony Stark's gone. Captain America presumably is an old man, and Thor is off in space with Guardians of the Galaxy, I guess, so they can still play with that. But yeah, they're going to have to elevate some of these side characters, and I think it's really smart, especially if they're all as weird and different as this. Like if Captain America and Winter Soldier or whatever it's called is it Falcon and Winter Soldier? What do they call the show?
I think it's Captain America. Well, no, I don't know.
Anyway, if that show is like an awesome spy show that really leans into that side of it and is less superhero-y, and we get the, I don't know, like the 24 of the Marvel Universe or whatever, that would be awesome.
And so, the Loki's going to be like Quantum Leap, I think, sort of. I think I originally, when I heard about all this television 2 years ago, my reaction was that it cannot be to television what the Marvel movies are to movies, because the very best television is stuff like Breaking Bad.
Right.
And and Marvel can't really go there. But what I'm starting to think is this is something new that we've never seen before. It's not going to be Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It's going to be a higher tier of television. And I feel like they're letting it count.
Right.
And it's all going to feed into each other for something that we haven't really experienced before. And I think that's really cool. I'm looking forward to it. I feel like Marvel sort of did that with movies, but we were all like, yeah, we've been doing this because we read comics all the time. But this is an even further version of that.
Well, I think it seems like they learned their lesson with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which maybe that's why Kevin Feige came in and said, no, we're going to do all this the way we do the movies. Because Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was a show where, okay, people love the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but we can't afford to do 20 of those a season, and we can't afford to cast these huge actors. So we'll cast Agent Coulson and then just create a standard network, adventure show around that. And it all felt tiny because they couldn't have the big characters in there. All of the special effects were small. And it was like, I don't know, it felt like Diet Coke compared to what the movies were. Whereas this, if they're smart about it, they pay one or two of the big actors and really focus on them and do weird stuff for 9-10 episodes and get out. And you do that several times, you've got as many eyeballs as one of the movies for probably a fraction of the cost. So
those first 2 episodes cost pennies, I'm sure, for what they did.
Right. Plus, they're all focusing on, other than Loki, they're all focusing on the actors that probably have smaller paychecks. You know, you had to bring in Robert Downey Jr. It'd be a really expensive TV show. So I think that's smart, and it also allows them to not keep leaning on the same things. Because at this point, and maybe it's been adjusted because of COVID, but I think we all need to take a breath after Endgame. Because what are you going to do to top that? You can't have a big, like punch 'em up action movie with all the Marvel Avengers characters now, because you can't top that. It can't be topped.
No.
So lean into the smaller stories and make you really care about these people, I think is really smart.
And I think what they're doing by leaning into the smaller stories is echoing their formula and going bigger, because what they did was they're like, here, you get a movie for every character.
Right.
And now we put them all together. And even though the stories are smaller, they're like, now you get 10 hours of every character. And I think the next movie is going to be even, well, I don't know if it'll be bigger than Endgame. If they put Doctor Doom in it, it will.
Reminds me of the Watchmen TV show. That Watchmen TV show seemed like it couldn't possibly work because of everything. And the reason it worked is because it didn't do anything you would expect them to do. Like
I did not see the Watchmen show. I need to watch that.
Well, they swung in a completely different direction. Yeah, this is the same sort of thing. Like you couldn't have seen this coming. There's no way you would have thought. You know what they'll do? They'll do Dick Van Dyke, but with the Vision of Scarlet Witch. Like that sounds insane, but it's really entertaining because there's nothing like it. And it takes advantage.
And I loved the Daredevil show. That's the only one of the Netflix ones I watched. I watched the first season, but I like this more because Daredevil was still what you expect.
Right.
And this was, I am excited to see where it's going instead of kind of knowing where it's going, you know?
And if they do a good job of slowly building the suspense and like giving, you know, like kind of losting out all of the question marks of what's going on, then by the time you get to the end, it can be really, really satisfying because you don't get anything. In the beginning, like clearly something's happening and it's weird, but mostly you're just watching a very strange old school TV show.
Right. He's an AI, so they're in a computer.
Right.
That's all we get, really.
And it's, yeah, I can't wait to see where it goes.
I give it 2 thumbs up.
What do you think they'll be homaging next? Like, what's your guess of the next? Because presumably it's the 70s, right?
I think they have to do. Well, I'm not an expert on when these shows fall because, like, Happy Days was a throwback, but I didn't understand that as a kid. I didn't understand it was that 70s show.
Right.
So I think they have to do Brady Bunch era. I think they have to do like Bob Newhart maybe, and I think Full House will be in there eventually.
There'll be a TGIF version.
Yeah.
There's got to be.
But I think this color one will be like Brady Bunch era.
Yeah, that makes the most sense. And, well, especially if they're leaning into the parenthood. Because she's pregnant and this one, if it jumps forward in time. I wonder if near the end of the season we'll get like 2.5 Men, Big Bang Theory era, like modern sitcoms, which are the ones I didn't watch.
Yeah, me too. So I'll know by then what the other people are feeling.
Right.
Maybe we'll get Alf.
Well, that would be ideal. If there's one with a puppet of any kind, I'm going to be thrilled. Also, I wonder, it's possible as it moves forward, to keep us interested, they'll move between eras within episodes because they aren't necessarily, because we saw that in the second one. Like it jumps up to the next era, sort of like colorizing it. It'll be really interesting. I can't wait. I assume they're only doing 1 episode per week after this first one, right?
I assume so. It seems like to me is they couldn't just release the first one because then people would think this is it, this is the show, and so they had to give us a hint that that's not just the show. Even though I'd be totally fine just watching that weird ass black and white show.
Yeah, well, I mean that would be the ballsiest version of it, right? There's just a whole season of I Love Lucy, and then in the second season stuff starts to get weird.
Yeah.
But yeah. All right. Well, I can't wait for next week. I'm not sure how we're going to be presenting this to you all, but my hope is at the end of the season, we'll do a big live stream where we all talk about our theories and whether it panned out or whether we liked it or not and bring you guys on. But because we're kind of dropping these out of the blue, for now, we're just going to do recorded ones. So let us know in the comments on YouTube or Twitter responses or whatever, like what you think, what you want us to talk about, what you liked about the episode. We want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. Dennis, where can people find you online?
You probably can find me where you got this, wherever that is. I'm on I'm Hopeless Dent on Twitter, Dennis Hopeless Comics on Instagram, and then I'm Dennis Hallam, I think, on Facebook.
And I'm on Instagram, Kyle Strahm _. I'm on Twitter at KStrom, and I'm on Facebook
That's
under
your-
my name. Thanks, everybody.